Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to this final episode of Topic UFO, at least for Season 3 and the year 2013. We'll be taking a short break, and then we'll be coming back in January 2014 with all new episodes, meeting some more people in the world of ufology. But tonight, to close things up for 2013, we're going to be speaking to Mr. Harry Drew. Some of you may remember Harry from a previous episode back in April of this year. He's the man behind the Kingman, Arizona UFO crash of 1953. Harry's got a new article that was written up about him and his investigation and research in Route 66 magazine, which should be pretty interesting to talk about with him. And he's also going to talk to us about some sightings that are being seen very recently, like within the last few weeks. And they're being seen by not just Harry. So we'll talk to him about that as well. So, Harry Drew will be here in just a second. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Paperwork. Oh, those dollars go.
Worse every year.
Figuring percentages really gets me. It's the budgets. You know, I chew up more pencils.
Markups, discounts, too much, too much.
There's gotta be an answer.
Introducing The Answer. A really small calculator, a really silent electronic, a really fast thinker, one that works anywhere on battery or plug-in, one with all the calculator know-how you'll probably ever need. Introducing the world's smallest electronic calculator from the maker of the world's most complete line, Sharp. Introducing the LC8, world's smallest electronic calculator by Sharp. Price tag to match, $345 complete. LC8, The Answer. See it.
Welcome back, everyone. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our guest for the evening. You know, many people, many actors and actresses I see on TV always talk about Tom Hanks being the nicest person in Hollywood. Well, tonight we have probably one of, if not the nicest person in ufology, and that is Mr. Harry Drew. Mr. Harry Drew, are you out there, sir?
I am here, Rick. Thank you. Good to hear you.
Yes, very good, and thanks for coming back. You know, Harry, you were here with us back in the beginning of April of this year, 2013, talking to us about the Kingman, Arizona UFO crash of 1953. And since that time, you have just been busy all over the place. So I've got quite a few things I want to talk to you about and ask you about. First thing I wanted to ask you is about this Route 66 magazine article that you were involved in. What's up with that?
Well, it's interesting because it's something that Route 66 magazine has never done. And Route 66, for those who haven't seen one, I suggest you do. And you can obtain them by subscription or order a single copy. Or if you have a Route 66 Association store nearby, you can get them there. But it is an international, slick, professionally done magazine about all of the things that are connected to or nearby Route 66, which was and still is the mother road here in the United States. And we have people that come here to the Kingman, Arizona area because we have the longest remaining piece and stretch of the original Route 66 to drive on. And people load up their classic cars and their sports cars and whatever they may have, clubs as well, into ships overseas, and they come here And during the summer months especially, they cruise Route 66. And so that's the idea about what Route 66 is about in the magazine. And because Kingman has local notoriety with the people, especially the old-timers, about the UFOs that came here in 1950 and 1953. And 2 days ago, we still get UFOs here on a regular basis. And there are flyways there that are as predictable almost as the planes that come into the airport, except these aren't airplanes. And so the writer for Route 66 picked up on the Kingman UFO story, a little bit about it. Mm-hmm. He asked a museum curator at a museum here what he knew about it, and he said, the person you need to talk to is Harry Drew. And that's how it came to my door, and I had the chance to meet noted author that worked on that. His name is, I guess I don't know if I can give his name out here or not. See the magazine, but it was one of the many memorable pieces that he has written for Route 66, and over a period of several months, we did the story on that, and the magazine proofed it a couple of times for clarity, and it hit the market on the 16th day of December 2013. So it's out now. Wow. It is the first UFO-related anything in Route 66 magazine. So I feel very good about that. It's a mainstream magazine.
Yeah.
That's where we need more of our information, where we have evidence and proof on things to be able to do that. I will tell you about this, and I'll say his name, Neil Davis. And Neil was so impressed by the meetings that he came here and met with me several times, and we discussed storyline. He was so impressed with what I showed him, and I took him to some of the areas that are relevant to the history of the Kingman UFO story, that he followed me to the 10th annual Gallup, New Mexico UFO Film Festival to hear me speak. And then I asked him up on stage to go ahead and give his own candid, no prompting, candid point of view about the whole thing. And he was very complimentary to me. I'm grateful for that because sometimes I don't get that. But he was and became a believer because there is so much solid evidence that discounts a lot of the internet storytelling that goes on. Mm-hmm. And so he went there. And then he spoke, and then he ended up being on stage with me with a couple of other people while we took questions from the audience. That went very well. So I was very grateful to. Yeah.
He wasn't one of these people that, tell the story and is giggling in the background. He truly became a believer, huh?
Absolutely, but he got to see some things you can put your hands on, and this is one of the things, Rick, that I like to make sure of when I'm speaking at conferences or right now, like on doing something that's basically international television. Your show has become very popular, and I commend you for your work. I'm glad you're on, and I think you're going to deliver the message to a lot of people to help make them believers. And what I have with the writer for the Route 66 magazine story that was done on me is the fact that, like people that I talk to ordinarily about this, I gave him something he could put his hands on, something he could see for himself. And then you don't go, well, I wonder if this is, or maybe is, or might be this kind of thing. It really, absolutely is fact. And those are things that make it nice because there's 9 versions that I'm aware of so far of the Kingman UFO story or Kingman UFO Crash, and none of them are correct. And I found that out just accidentally. It wasn't my mission, my purpose at the beginning of all this was because I'm a former director and curator of museums of history and archaeology and anthropology and a historian. I wanted to know, is this Kingman UFO story really true? Was there anything there or not? So that's what started my research 6 years ago. And I got way, way more than I ever expected. It's incredible.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing that really comes across with you, Harry, and the research that you do. You do come from a historian background. You come from a museum curator background. So you are really focused in on just the facts. You want the facts. There is no fluff there whatsoever. And that's what we need more of, in this ufology world. There's just so much junk out there, to try for people to just come in from the outside and try to get through all that junk and get to, the real facts is very hard. So, we need more people like you. And I definitely suggest people that if you haven't seen the episode where Harry talks about the Kingman, Arizona crash, go watch it. It's was in during season 2, April 9th, I believe is the date on that. So Harry, since April of this year, what have you been doing UFO-wise?
Oh, you're saying since April?
Too much to even remember?
Well, let's see. Oh, yeah, it's like, where do I pick up at? April would have put me in San Francisco at the New Living Expo.
You were just leaving to go there. When we did our show.
It was at City Center in the center of San Francisco, and unbelievably, there were something in the neighborhood of 20,000 people paid to the door.
Wow.
It's just amazing. And they came there to see a number of speakers. I spoke. I was also on a panel with Robert Parala that he runs there, along with some very noted people that, even though I was on the panel, I enjoyed listening to the things that they were into. But it kind of went from that. I got back. I had a couple of things going on. The next thing I know, I have a call from the MUFON chapter, OC, in the Southern California, LA area. And I was on a plane down to speak to them, something I had hoped to do last year when I first broke this with the International MUFON Symposium in Cincinnati. And then I flew back the next day from LA to Las Vegas, and then went up to the National MUFON Conference going on there, and buzzed home via Area 51. And I've been back to Las Vegas multiple times for connected things. I now have my two DVDs are at what is called the Flying Saucer, Area 52, and Boulder City, which is a wonderful, wonderful store, and it's in the historic district at Boulder. Oh. So we're talking Hoover Dam, Boulder Dam,
right,
and that area. And then, of course, some field work, and then working a little more on one of the two books that I have going. And, of course, then the Gallup, New Mexico 10th Annual UFO Film Festival that Chuck and Nancy Wade put on and do a great job.
Yeah.
And then I had the opportunity, I had the state newspaper is called the Navajo Times, and reporters and a videographer were there. And so I did like an introductory story for the Navajo Times on video, where I'm at the very start. I'm talking outside the El Moro Theater, which is a historic restored theater there. Mm-hmm. And they're very fortunate to have any community that's been around that has saved one of their original theaters has made the right decision, because it's a cultural place that's irreplaceable as we go along with all the new glitzy stuff that we get. Have a little flavor of where they came from. But I spoke there and did some voiceover and then ended that particular thing. And then I'm working on a new documentary, and that will be released in August 2014. I actually allowed a lot of the footage to be aired at the film festival in Gallup, but it won't be out for anybody to see other than that. I took the only master that I had free that I could take with me anywhere and allowed that to be used. So basically what I'm doing is I'm giving out more information that I have not presented because I've been trying to give this to the public in a way that they can absorb what's going on here with all of the stories that have been told since the 90s about Kingman, which basically is a marvelous disinformation program. And I don't know if MIB people are behind this or who, but it's now taken on a life of its own. So you have things like the original craft that landed on the 18th of May, 1953. It lands on all the kinds of different dates, and instead of 4 crew members being fined and taken by the United States Air Force recovery team to Groom Lake, they're shown or painted as a monkey or a woman alien who ran off, or a dead alien, and 3 aliens stayed and fought it out with the recovery team using ray guns until the power packs failed. Yeah, these are real stories, and that what really happened is the craft made a forced landing. There didn't have a scratch. It was not shot by a rocket. There was no military in Kingman, Arizona. Then they left in August of 1945, and this is 1953. 8 years had gone by. But so a lot of silly things that I'm trying to clear up.
Let me ask you, now, do you have more research to do with the Kingman, Arizona crash, or have you done all that can be done? You've got what you got, and that's it.
Oh, I'm still doing research work, and that isn't going to stop. I spent about a year at the landing site doing site analysis, which involves everything from radiation testing there to soil samples for various things that may be that stand out, little dusting of gold. This country's that way. Some of the best turquoise in the world comes from not very far from where I live, but compression tests, porosity tests, was able to verify why the UFO was about 20 inches, resting about 20 inches into the soil. It had landed in a very slow, kind of lazy, laid out drain field at the base of the Wallapai mountain range. And it was sitting in an area that's where the mountain meets the desert. And it was examined about 9 p.m. at night on the 21st day of May, 1953, by a man who held degrees in physics, mathematics, and was also an engineer. And he was one of 40 scientists that one by one, as they were taken off a bus by military police, examined this craft. And they were there on the ground about an hour on that evening where there was a quarter moon. And I verified out of a 65-page report that renowned and well-respected and certainly admirable gentleman by the name of Raymond Fowler, a UFO researcher and educator, had interviewed this particular man in 1973, who was one of 4 firsthand eyewitnesses who actually touched the craft. And I have, through Mr. Fowler's work, I have an annotated copy of his report that was provided to the Mojave County historian back in 1978, annotated being the historian spoke with him and communicated with him and made modifications and notations in the 65-page report for clarification. So I have some of my questions already answered by another historian long ago, and then interviews that I have that are on video, and one witness that I've not released information about yet. I'm holding that back. And then, of course, I speak with some of the remaining old-timers from that era who will discuss this to whatever degree they will do that. Because to outsiders, and I'm no longer one, I've lived here long enough not to be an outsider, but to people from the outside, they don't know anything, and they aren't going to say anything. And that's how it is. And I can tell you that even talking with the archaeologist at the Bureau of Land Management, because he's related to some of the old-timers and the family that first settled the area, and he said it's still that way on just about everything. So, and it is. So you have to go really dig, do the kind of research where you go where documentation can be trusted in advance, and you have to get off your chair and away from your internet and get out in the dirt and visit those snakes and all these other things. and it's hard work. Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Well, tell me, because from what I understand, and as I think you mentioned when we first started tonight, the UFO activity there in and around Kingman hasn't stopped. And just recently, well, I guess the last couple of weeks or so, you actually took a snapshot of four, it looks like four lights to me, and I want you to tell us about that. But unknown to you, an astronomer who lives on the complete other side of Kingman captured the same thing on the same night, the same time. What's going on with that? Because that is very, very strange stuff.
Well, I can tell you that after I found the landing site for the Kingman UFO, and I walked up to, after listening to one of my interviews with someone who was a first-hand eyewitness, he said something to me that everybody had never heard about. And he gave me a landmark clue. And, you know, this is like, I had it narrowed down to about a 20-mile square area, maybe. And there's a zillion places you can go. And it's a lot of miles. It's one of the largest counties in the United States here, and in Mojave County. And when I found the landmark, I know exactly where to go. It's like I'd been there before, and I drove right to the site where the Air Force had been, and I was the next person there after they left. Nobody else had been there, and the things that even they left were there, and documented and datable and identifiable. So when that happened, I thought, Eureka, I found it. Just like hitting the mother-lode gold mine. And then I went home and got cleaned up from being out in the desert all day. And I went for an evening walk because I have to stay pretty limber for all the things I've been doing. And I walk about 4 miles at the end of the day. It was the routine. And as I was ending my walk, I looked, I'm in a valley, out my back door, and past my backyard is 35 miles of open desert. And I look out, and I'm surrounded by mountains. And I look out, and hovering toward me on my side of the mountain is a big UFO. And I watched it for about 5 minutes, and it just stayed there. And so I thought, I'm going in and get my camera. And I went in and got my camera, and it came back out. Now, this is daytime. And I look, and it's gone. And I thought, shoot, I should have just stayed and watched it leave. And as I turned to walk away, it was there. It had cut the distance it was at in half. And it was just very calmly, very quietly, and very low, kind of sliding off in a kind of a horseshoe shape that turned it right back over my backyard. And I had it straight over me at about 400 feet in elevation, and sunset was setting in, and I didn't realize until after it kind of made a rotation in, almost in place, and I saw sky through it, that it was a V shape. I began to think it was a delta because of the brilliant blue white lights under it. And I'm outside wearing polarized, really dark lenses because our latitude and longitude is such that you really need that here in Arizona. And so I was squinting, looking up at this thing. It was so bright. And then I marveled at the fact that it was a V. I had no information or experience with V-shaped UFOs that I was, so I was kind of surprised that way. And then I noticed down one appendage, on the inside of one appendage of the craft, there was the burnt red-orange of the sunset going down its charcoal-looking skin. And this thing just very gradually pulled away, going due southwest towards Needles, California from my area, roughly. And it continued to accelerate and accelerate until it went off into infinity as far as being able to watch. I went back in my house, and as I stepped through the door, my phone rang, and it was the engineer that's worked with me on my project, who at that time was, in fact, had already designed and was building the most advanced ROV flight control system on Earth, and it was used for James Cameron, and was working on the thing with the Mariana Trench dive. And he had stopped what he was doing to come up and help me with some drone overflights with cameras so I could get some other footages that I couldn't see any other way. And so it was him on the phone, and he said, "You're not going to believe it." And I said, "What?" And he said, "I just had a large V-shaped UFO hovering over my house about an hour ago." And I said, "It just left here."
Oh, my God.
And he had been with me on that trip up to the landing site. And that was the beginning of a whole series of visitations that I started getting then, and I'm still getting now. And what you're talking about, coming back to the facts that you mentioned, was I went out, things happen here at the house, some things that would creep some people out pretty bad. We get bumps and thuds, noise, loud bumps and thuds. I'm in my office right now, and if my lights started twittering, that's one clue, day or night, that I've got company. And I grab a camera and I head out back. And I'll give you a little more about that in a minute, but because I've had some recent daytime stuff. And so a lot of things are going on, but in this 35 miles of flat, clear, open desert, you can see everything. And it isn't like looking over up at a hill or I don't have any houses in the way and this kind of thing. And so I went out and I just took a small pocket camera with a fixed lens, and not a big deal, not a big rush. I went out and I look up, and it's like there were two UFOs landed out back, and there were these other UFOs in flight, and they weren't all that high, to me anyway. And I took out a camera and I shut the flash off because it was dark, and I took a picture that you can see on my Facebook page,
right,
which is harry.drew.35, and it came out fine. You're seeing what I saw. And I also took some other pictures at that time. I've taken some before, meaning back when I found the Kingman craft, because it all started then. And I don't know or understand the connection why that is. And I'm trying to do one thing at a time here, and I'm actually doing 4 or 5, but I try to get one thing done, and that is to get the information out that I've already gotten and proven. But
Harry, let me stop you for 1 second, because
go ahead.
This picture that you took, the nighttime photo, it is three white dots on the right side of the picture and one white dot on the left-hand side of the picture.
Yep.
Do you think those are 4 individual objects, or is this some massive...
Well, yeah, that's a good question. It behaved like they were all one, and I mentally visualized it as 4. Because
but the video... oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they flew in perfect formation,
right,
which just about makes... the problem is the way we think, if being that what I've seen already, they aren't our craft. They aren't our craft. And so I think the way most everyone else does, and it's like there are some constraints on the physics of things because they are on us. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it would be on another life form. And so their machines could fly in concert in perfect formation without the difficulty that our own type of craft could experience because of turbulence and other things. So it would make an airplane change position, or even a drone would change. You couldn't keep it. The flight platform couldn't stay stable, and these were all stable. So it was either in perfect concert or it was one really big craft. But either way, as I was photographing it, basically straight up from me, a gentleman who's very accomplished in astronomy, and he has some of the best equipment for deep space and closer in photography and video. He was shooting the same thing, and he was shooting it from the east, and you get an angle difference, which makes perfect sense because they were right over me. That's straight up. And he was seeing them off to the right of them. And so that reflects in the video that he shot. That's also on my Facebook page, along with links to go to look at some of the other stuff he does. Yeah. But so we communicate.
Now, that video when that the gentleman took, the astronomer, now I've watched that several times, and those 4 dots, 3 on the right, one on the left side of the screen while you're watching it, they do not break formation at all. I mean, they are just so right on static. And from when I look at that video, it looks like he captured them moving as they flew by, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's really something. I've already seen. I have, as I mentioned to you previously, I have an incredible photograph taken at night with the pocket camera, of all things, of what we would coin as a mothership. And this isn't a light in the sky. This is very clear. You can see every bit of it. You're looking at what we would think of as the front end of it, and it's really large. And these dots are lights in the sky. The 4 of them really looked like one massive craft, and it all moved together. That's what I was saying. It all moved together, but I always used a little fudge factor and thought, well, maybe they were flying in exact formation somehow and able to maintain that. But what they were doing basically made that impossible also. So you were saying one thing and maybe not necessarily 4.
Wow.
So, but now, I got it with a camera.
Is that, have you posted that picture of the mothership?
No. Well, actually, I think I had it on once and pulled it off. Because I hadn't decided what to do about it yet. And when I put it up, someone who had actually been up here, he's from the East Coast, and he had been with Top Secret Tours, and they did the Southwest tour, and I ended up seeing him amongst a group that Antonio Cineros, who does Top Secret Tours, had with them, and he posted in a clear note saying, you know, Harry, when you're done with this, maybe you might want to do a book or a video on what you've gone through trying to do the story on the Kingman craft from 1953, because this continues. I've had some things happen that I explained some of it to a state director for MUFON, who is a friend of mine from Arkansas, and I told him about some of these things, and he said that they've heard of these things. And of course, I've not been in the business, so to speak, to where I have things coming into me from other people like they are. And so I had like a tubular shaped shaft of light come down out of space from what was a mothership, and it was translucent. It was tubular. It was perfectly clear. And there were two craft sitting on the ground about 1 mile distance from my backyard, and which you can see in the night. They aren't dots; they're machines. And the tube came down, the light came down to the ground between them, and then a brilliant white cylinder-shaped thing came down this tube like an elevator. And this is something that I actually saw. And when it came down, and the moment it reached the ground, all the lights went out. It just went black. And that's what you normally have, because there are no street lights or anything out in the middle of the desert. And interestingly enough, I'm telling the chap over beyond Kingman, and he has one on video since, and it's a beam of light coming from the ground up, like in some places on Earth this happens because of ice crystals or water crystals in the air. And of course, we're in an area where our humidity goes down to 0.
Yeah.
You know, so there's not much in the air beyond oxygen and nitrogen, and not much pollution even.
Well, listen, Harry, we're just about out of time here, but I wanted to let you talk about some upcoming things that you've got going on. Of course, we've got the article in Route 66 magazine, but then also you're going to be going over to Italy to do your speech, right?
Yes. In October, I accepted an invitation, formal invitation to speak at the International UFO Congress Europe, and that will be at Tarquinia, Italy in May. And it looks like probably a couple of engagements will happen in the United Kingdom in and around the same time for me, which is handy because I'm already there, and so I can do that. But I'm very excited to be there. It's about 55 miles out of Rome, and this is open to everyone. I'm hoping I can get a lot of people from over here going over, and I'll have a chance to see my friend, author Steve Bell, who is a very prolific author, 42 books, in fact, who lives in Rome, and he spoke on 18 May this year on my behalf and presented some of the material that I have to offer for conferences, which led in turn to the invitation to have me there, you know, to talk about everything else. So, yeah, that's very important. And I also have a new book coming out that will happen in 2014 called 7 Days in May, the Kingman UFO Story. And it will be an illustrated book to where people have a chance to see some of the high-grade photography of the areas that I tramped through in the heat and even in the cold when there was snow, because up on the Wallapai, it's 8,256 feet high. So, but those are some of the things that are coming, and a whole string of interviews that are going to run right, like with you right now, right straight through to May. I'm already booked.
Wow.
You know, so, yeah.
Well, I tell you, you know, for the viewers out there, if if you're a newbie or semi-newbie and you want to look into a very interesting case, look into this Kingman, Arizona crash from back in 1953, right, Harry? Harry has just done so much research, and this is something you can really sink your teeth into. You can really get behind it, and it's fact. It's not fiction, right?
It's history.
It's history.
That's
right.
exactly how I've handled it. I've used all the protocols of the profession. This is history. I'm doing history, and if it isn't right, I tell you, and if it is right, I tell you that. And I give you evidence you can go and grab onto, where you can go find these things and look at them for yourself. So there's no question about who's telling fibs and won't get anything come Christmas.
There you go. Well, listen, Harry, it's always nice to talk to you. Like I say, definitely one of, if not the nicest guy in ufology. So thanks so much for
My
sharing
pleasure, Rick. Thank
some
you.
of your time with us tonight, Harry, and we will stay in touch.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. Good night. Bye-bye.
Open the door, you'll find the secret. To find the answer is to